Hi everybody, welcome back to Sprueverse, my scale model universe. And here we are. We are dangerously close to the resin pour for this World of Wayne Sprueverse challenge. And I have to tell you, I am genuinely scared and excited all at the same time. It's been quite a bit of work to detail the shark and the tank and the Hooper figure, get the hands right and get everything ready. And then of course working on my base, my sea floor. And now it's sort of got to come together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install the base right now. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use this Lexel. And what Lexel is obviously it's silicone. And it's the kind of silicone that has incredible clarity and incredible strength. And the reason why I'm using that is because I want to make sure that no resin gets under my base, which is, as you know, made of foam. The other thing that's going to do too, it's going to raise my floor about, I'd say a good 1.5 inches. Now that's a good thing because it's going to cut down on the amount of resin I'm going to need to pour in this. All my resin has arrived, 12 gallons if you can believe it. And what we're doing is we are using liquid glass. It's a deep pouring resin and it's from a company called Super Clear and they're out of Florida. And they have assured me that this deep pour resin can go all the way up to about 4 inches. So based on a 4-inch pour, I only need 3 pours to complete this, so I should be able to do it in a day. So what we're going to do is we're going to install the floor right now, and then the next thing we'll do is prepare for the pour. Now, but before we do that, I do have a couple of things that I need to work out. One of those is going to be the exact placement of my shark and the exact placement of my Hooper in the cage. Now, Hooper in the cage is going to go on a little piece of dow or wood, so that's fine. He's going to be suspended fine. It's the shark that is going to be incredibly tricky. Right now, Bruce is on the stand that was provided by the model kit, but we want him suspended in midair. I did think about putting some kind of a glass rod under him, but I thought, you know what, you're going to see that. I think the magic of this and the fun of this is going to be seeing this shark literally suspended in midair. That is going to look cool. So without further ado, let us install the base. So here we go. I'm doing a really nice thick bead. And I'm not getting too far to the edge here because I don't want it to, I don't want it to ooze out on me. Okay, there we go. That's pretty good. And now I'm going to take my base and I'm going to carefully, ever so carefully, drop this in, get it all the way up, let it slide, and say goodbye. It's in, it's down, and it's not coming out. That's exciting. So far, so good. That's really good. Now, what I did was, obviously, I painted the sides of the foam too, so it has a kind of a finished look to it. So there it is in and it's ready to go. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out the position of Bruce. And that's going to take a little bit, it's going to take a little bit of figuring it out. Grab a ruler here. And I'm going to say his body is at 3 inches. His tail is at 1. and the top of his mouth is just about 4.5. So what I'm going to then be able to do is start my pour, and I know then that the first pour will get me to where I can actually lay this into the resin. But what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to put a little bit of wire on his tail fin, and I'm going to put a little bit of wire in the mouth, and that should allow me to suspend him exactly where I want in the tank. There's a couple of things that I've noticed that I've sort of taken into consideration here. One is the actual viewer's point of view for this tank. Now, the front of my tank angles at a soft sort of 70 degrees. That to me makes a nice aesthetic, and so I'm pretty happy with that. But interestingly enough, when the shark was actually on its stand, it was very upright and away from the camera in terms of profile. You couldn't see a lot of the mouth. So I've cheated the mouth towards me, and I've got Hooper's knife ready to stab again. I may adjust that down just a little bit. Forgive my reflection, I apologize. But you can see here, now I'm head on, and I really like the fact that you can see the shark in that sort of aggressive pose. Probably just had his nose in the tank, pulled back after he got stabbed a couple of times. And that's the moment that I've tried to capture. You know, when you're doing a diorama, it's really interesting because you start to think about, okay, where's the action? Where's the drama? What's the moment I'm trying to capture? So it's never easy to kind of to figure those things out. I'm also, I think, going to profile the tank just a little more like this as well. Now, it does not look, from the linear perspective, it doesn't look right. But from a dramatic perspective and trying to show the audience as much as possible, I think that makes all the sense in the world. So I'm sort of liking that a lot. I don't think I want the knife any closer to his nose. I like the drama of exactly where this is. A couple of things I'm going to attempt to do. I'm going to attempt to inject bubbles into the shark cage itself, just behind Hooper, to try and really accentuate that sort of dramatic moment of taking too much air out of your tank too fast. The other thing I'm going to try and do with a turkey baster needle is I've got some Citadel blood. It's a color, and it's very viscous, but it's got a really rich kind of red to it. And I'm going to think about perhaps putting that into the water. Although the other thing I could put in is red dye. I do have that as well. I'm going to have to be very careful because a couple of things are going to happen. When I stick the needle in, I'm going to create this sort of tube, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get rid of that. So that's going to be a challenge. The other option I have is when I get the resin level up to the nose itself, I might try and put just a couple of drops of blood on the end of his knife and see if I get a reaction that way, because I am super worried about doing anything that can affect this resin pour. But I'm pretty happy with how I've got this laid out. And I think it's just a function now of figuring out where the accoutrements go. I've got obviously a Jaws logo that I'm going to have to figure out where that goes. I suspect it's going to go in the tank itself and probably just sort of down on the floor like that. Or maybe perhaps even at the front of the tank like this at an angle. Let's see, I'm trying things out here. So it's not perfectly square, I apologize, but we can get it that way with a little bit of But anyway, that looks pretty good. And then of course I've got the shark dart, which, as we've agreed, is going to be on the bottom of the tank itself. So I'm gonna see what I can do to put that kind of just leaning against one of the corals. That looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is just put a little bit of silicone on the bottom of my shark dart. Make sure that I've got a good way to glue down my Jaws logo, and then I think we will be ready for the pour. Here we go. Now I got to watch to make sure that I don't get above that dorsal fin. Okay. That is, it's pretty good, but I think I can keep going. I need to get my heat gun on here. Okay, so here's what happened. As we were doing the pour, it was under a tremendous amount of pressure, obviously, but the silicone that I had used to attach the foam base to the glass literally pulled away and the base started to rise. And so I was in a whole bunch of trouble. We've managed to put some weights down on the base to hold it down, and I think we're going to be okay as long as this is allowed to set. The only issue here, of course, is I've still got to get one more pour in here quickly, and then I've got to get a heat gun in here to try and get out some of this gas. So right now, things are not looking good. We've added 10 pounds of weight on some paint sticks, very gingerly attached to the base. Now the problem is, they've got to be pulled at some point, and I'm not entirely sure what's going to happen when we pull them. So at this point, if we can't get them out of here, we have a small problem on our hands. So we're going to start to let this set up and then carefully pull those out.
Okay, great. I'm going to.
But they've got to be. So it is staying down, but they both fell.
It's wild, right?
Yeah, they are raising. Do you know what? If we get the shark out of the water, but the problem is once this starts to tack up, whatever you start to pull away is gonna. That's why it needs to be at the sides of the tank. Okay, so best laid plans. When I thought that I could attach this foam base to the glass floor simply with silicone, I was dead wrong. So essentially what has happened is the pour has pulled, it's actually gotten under the foam, and it has pulled the silicone, holding it to the glass away. And I just lost control of the pour as my foam base started to rise. So best laid plans. And unfortunately, sometimes the right thing to do is the toughest thing to do, and that's to call this pour. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull everything, clean it up, and reattach this foam base to this glass tank with something a lot stronger. And the good news that comes out of this actually is that because the base now is coated in resin, it should actually be a little less permeable. So anyway, as of this pour, it is scrapped. This is the second pour with this deep pour resin, which bit of a learning curve for me. Anyway, we've poured about 2 inches. The resin itself is actually at the belly of the shark. Idea being that when it goes off, I can remove the wires from it, and away we go. And then it should stay in place, and there shouldn't be an issue. And then I can just cut these wires, remove these sticks, and we should be good to go. But the amount of heat that this is generating is extraordinary. I don't think it's any hotter than the test pour that we did, which was much more concentrated, but it's definitely a concern. So what I've done is we brought in an extra fan here to get some cooling, to get some cooling on this thing, and to try and maintain some kind of an airflow around this, and see where we go. But so far we're okay. There are a couple of issues with bubbles, but interestingly enough, they're not everywhere. They're just in a couple of places, and so I think from a dramatic point of view, they may actually work. A couple of other issues. One of them is the actual pour line here. I run the risk here of having a delamination line. Now the mix is perfect. I kept everything clean, but nevertheless, we run the risk of delamination, and we'll see. It's all part of the experiment. But I have to say, ultimately, it looks really cool.
What are you thinking?
Well, I'm trying to understand all of this oxygenation, this sort of delamination that's going on. It's really a drag.
Why is it delamination? It's just bubbling. I don't think delamination is like that's when there's a line.
Well, it's either it's water or something has been introduced into this. Air has been introduced into this, and it's creating gas from the heat, I think.
I think it's a chemical reaction to the heat.
This resin is supposed to be able to be poured up to 4 inches deep. It's a deep pour resin. It's supposed to be able to handle it, and it's supposed to cure. It's supposed to get tacky after 24 hours and then cure after 72. But still, it's cool. No matter what the result is, it's pretty awesome. We'll see. So, overnight, we continued to keep it cool. But what's interesting is that we had an exothermal reaction, and this glass got incredibly hot. Now, it has completely separated from the tank. But what you can see, which is really interesting, is that it has separated. Now, it's still a little tacky, so I'm ready to pour to keep going here. But I think this is very salvageable, because even though you're not going to be able to see anything visibly through the tank, the rest of the pour is perfectly clear. So that means that what I would have to do is gingerly sand this down back to a smooth surface, and with several grades of sandpaper, bring it back to a perfect polished finish. So I think this might be salvageable. So I'm going to keep pouring, and after I've completed the next pour, we'll see if we get the same exothermal reaction as we did previously. Now, the only other concern I do have here is that with the next pour, it's going to seep down these edges. And I don't know what that's going to do in terms of continuing to add to my difficulty in terms of all of the bubbling. Now, this could be several things. It could be a bad mix, but I'm not entirely sure it is. I follow the instructions to the T, and then I mix this for 5 minutes, let it stand, pour it all into a cleaner container, and then I mixed it again for another 3 minutes, and I got perfectly clear resin with very few bubbles. And when I did the pour, I had a crystal clear pour. The interesting thing about this deep pour resin is it doesn't really create a lot of bubbles, not a lot of gas, and it went in beautifully. So it's a bit of a mystery to me. But best laid plans, and I'm not going to quit. I'm going to keep going, and we'll see what we get.